The Powers Project.
Hello, friends. You've been hearing me talk about intake breathing for quite a while now. And so today I thought I'd show you what it's all about. So it comes in this nice little compartment here with the nose tabs and with the magnetic strip that goes over the top. And this little thing here connects the tabs put on your nose. Now, what I'm going to do is I will end up editing this because I don't have a mirror in front of me. So when I come back, you're going to see the little tabs. So what I'll do, I'll show you here. So we'll take these tabs out like this. And so what you do is you take this little thing that has a magnet on the end and you bring it up like that. And there is your tab. Okay. And then what you do is you put it on your nose. Actually, I put it this way. You put one on this side, and then you put one on this side, and then the magnetic strip goes across. And what you'll find is that it works immediately. As soon as you put that strip across, it pulls your nasal passage, the nose open, so that you can breathe more. And as you're going to find with this episode that I did with Karese, that in order to obtain better health, we need to breathe through our nose. And this is the thing that will do that. The reason why I love this product is because it eliminated my snoring problem that I had. And it also obviously helps me with my athletic performance when I'm lifting weights and when I'm doing my stationary bike. It's amazing. It gives you more energy. And like I've said before, when I'm lifting weights, when I have this on, I'm doing 2 extra reps than when I don't. You wouldn't think it would make that big of a difference, but it really does. And the wonderful thing I love about this is the people who are part of intake breathing, Alex and Natalie, they're just great people and they offer a money back guarantee. If it doesn't work for you for whatever reason, they will gladly return your money. They're just a great company. They're great people, and this is a great product. So I'll be right back with the little tabs on, and then I'll put the magnetic strip on, and you'll see what it looks like. Okay, and we're back. So as you can see, I have the little tabs on my nose, and the 2 things I need to show you. One is that when you pick up this tab, you'll notice these little white tabs, the little that are on the back of it, and those peel off and then they stick to your nose. Before you do that, however, step I forgot is you're going to want to, and this comes with everything you need. So this is a little alcohol wipe. You just take this off and open this up, wipe your nose off before you stick these on, okay? And then it's this easy. So you can see the way my nose looks now. Good thing I cleaned all the hair out of there. And you can see how it opens it up immediately. And this just keeps you from breathing through your mouth in the night, and therefore you don't need to snore any longer. And I know if you have a special somebody you sleep with, they're going to appreciate that. So now, as before, you can go over to intakebreathing.com and you can apply the promo code POWERS and you can get 20% off your order. So, like I said, there's nothing to lose and everything to gain because you have a money back guarantee. And Natalie and Alex are just 2 of the greatest people you'd ever want to meet. 2 really super nice people. And they stand behind their product. And it's easy because it's a great product. So go over to intakebreathing.com. Use the promo code POWERS, get your 20% off your order, and you'll be happy. And so will your partner. So you're from New Jersey, but you're actually down in my neck of the woods, actually further south than me, and you're escaping the snow, I take it.
Yes, and what a time to escape the snow. I mean, it's been everywhere, like literally all over the country.
You definitely picked a smart time to get down here. So now, are you staying down here? Or are you just vacationing or?
I am hanging out for the winter.
Oh, so now do you
Yeah,
have a
a little bit
practice
of.
down
I am still practicing, but through virtual. I'm doing teletherapy. I think with COVID and everything the way it is, especially in New Jersey, that's not even a thing right now in person. And so I don't plan on, actually opening back up my doors until
Right.
I don't even know when COVID's over, but when it's over.
Right, when it's over, and hopefully it will be over soon. If we could just get everyone on the same page instead of people acting like these children who are throwing their little temper tantrums because they have to wear a mask and all this nonsense. And I want to talk about that since a big part of what we're going to talk about is breathing and sleep and how it can affect your health. And why I'm so happy I was able to get you on as a guest is because I actually heard about James Nestor's book, Breath. And when I found you, I was like, oh, this is great. I've been looking for an expert who can talk about this and talk about the benefits and, and the health hazards about breathing through your mouth and things of that nature. So I'm really pleased to have you on, and it's great. Um, so with that said, let's start with what you do. And I will say this: you do you have something that's called myofunctional therapy, which is not myofascial therapy, which is completely different. So what is
Two
myofascial?
opposing thoughts, absolutely.
So they're absolutely on the opposite ends of the spectrum as far as thoughts go.
Well, yes and no. I mean, myofascial is going to deal with touch. It's like physical manipulation of the fascia, which are these connective tissue bands that wrap around the muscles, right? So that is not necessarily what I work with in any regards at all. What I really work with is we're going to deal with a lot of the oral facial muscles and their function. So it's two completely different things.
Okay. So
Yeah.
um so yours is called myofunction.
Functional. Yes.
Functional. All right. So tell us about myofunctional and what I know you just said it's the muscles in the face, but why the face? Like, how does the face have so much to do with our health?
Oh, I love that question. That's fantastic. Okay, so just to backtrack just a little bit, myofunctional therapy is essentially like having personal training of sorts. So if you want to imagine it, I work with all the muscles below the eye, above the shoulders, right? So we're working and the oropharyngeal complex to try to strengthen and coordinate them, right? Now, if we think a little bit further, like, if we were off all my skin, like, ew, take off a lot of the muscle tissue. What's underneath there? It's all upper respiratory, right? And we can go for days without food and days without water, but we can't go not but a few minutes without breathing. So upper respiratory is going to be critical for everything because all of the muscles are going to require oxygen in order to really do what it is they have to do. We've got to have the oxygenation in our blood in order to get everything to function and work and to live, to survive. So yes, it's going to connect to everything because the mouth, the nose, these are where everything starts. Everything gets into the body, usually through these two orifices. And then from there, that's where we get a breakdown with systemic health and so forth. There's so many manifestations of upper respiratory issues.
So okay, so tell me this: why is nose breathing? Now, having been an athlete most of my life, I always breathe through my nose. It was just I don't know
Nice.
why, it was just natural for me. But tell me why. Why was that better for me than if I'm breathing through my mouth?
Well, I'm sure you were a more successful athlete because you were breathing through your nose, because there are plenty of athletes who do a lot of mouth breathing and they probably don't get exactly where they want to be. So, like I mentioned before, it's all about oxygenation, right? So, when we are breathing through our nose, which is physiologically designed for breathing, when the air comes up into our nose, first it's able to be warmed. Our nose is like a natural humidifier. It's able to be filtered. So anything that's not supposed to be taken in by our respiratory system is usually filtered out by the nose hairs, right? And then we're able to optimize it as we're taking in and able to convert more nitric oxide. that nitric oxide is going to allow that oxygen to really bind to those receptors within the body. And then now we're able to really have our oxygenation as our body and our blood is able to take everything all throughout and power the organs and so forth. When you're breathing through your mouth, there's nothing that's going to humidify it. And there's nothing really to filter it. Honestly, you're just taking in air and you're probably not getting even the best quality of air. And so what's going to happen is that you're going to kind of be working on hypoxia. So that's less oxygen than would be ideal. And you can't function properly like that. Our brain is not meant to function on a reduced level of oxygen, and our body is always trying to keep us alive. So what it's going to do is it's going to prioritize where this oxygen is going. So you can't get the best out of your body function if it's got to prioritize and send as much as possible to your brain and to your heart, because these are critical organs. You're not going to be able to really get a good run and a great stride. You're not going to be able to sustain a lot of duration of athletic abilities. You're really going to struggle, and your body is really going to suffer as a result.
Is this all right? So there's this thing of how we call like dumb people mouth breathers. Is this because they're not getting enough oxygen to the brain? Is that what you're saying? So if you're breathing through your mouth, you might want to close it and think.
You know what? I don't know. I feel like that's a question that could get me into trouble. Somebody would pull up this clip and be like, but you said.
Yeah, but I feel like I'm on to something.
You might be. Actually, yes, you are on to something. When we are operating in hypoxia, where we have less of that oxygen running in our system, when our brain's not getting optimal amounts, it is going to impair some of that brain function, right? So you will be less able to critically make decisions. You kind of imagine it like if you're feeling a little tipsy, right? You don't make your best decisions as you're feeling tipsy. You're not of your whole sound mind. So imagine that in the same way, the body has to just kind of control what's going on with that air. And so you lose a little bit of your inhibitions, you lose a little bit of that critical thinking. So would I say that you are, if you're mouth breathing, that you're not going to be the smartest of people? I would say that maybe you'd be a little bit inhibited.
Right. That's a very nice way to put it. You're much more diplomatic than I am. So you believe that by correcting our breathing and breathing through our nose, that this can enhance our health. You also,
100%.
though, don't you believe that there's healing as well? Like there's healing through breathing and sleep. So how does it heal? Is it the same thing?
So it's very similar, right? Only where we're getting restoration, especially with our brain, is going to be in sleep. I mean, our brain is functioning at levels that we can't even comprehend when we're sleeping. When you're really in that deep REM sleep, and you are actually getting optimal brain activity, it's really flushing cerebral spinal fluid waste as well. It's getting all of your memories of the day. It's all of that critical function that the brain is really using to restore, to prep you for the next day. All of that happens during sleep, right? So if you're not breathing well, first of all, during the day, but definitely if you're not breathing well in the day, you're not breathing well at night, you can't get into a really good REM level of sleep. You'll probably get stuck and stunted. And so you won't cycle through appropriately. So if I wanted to compare it to something, what I usually say is that it's kind of like if you're doing laundry, right? So you put all the clothes into the laundry bin, and you put all the clothes into the washing machine is what I should say. Put all the clothes into the washing machine and you run the cycle, right? And all the clothes kind of get smushed as it did the rinse cycle and it spun everything out. It gets smushed along the side. And so in another load of laundry because you can, because now there's space to put in more, doesn't make these clothes any cleaner, right? And it's going to eventually cause a problem. If you're not able to cycle and help your brain restore, you're not emptying out that brain's washer. And so you're not really getting the most function out of your brain as you possibly can.
So when are you saying, so here's a question I've had for a long time, because I've always heard that in order for sleep to count, it has to be consistent. When I was younger, I could sleep for 18 hours a day seriously, and even as an adult I could sleep for I could sleep 8-10 hours and not even bat an eye at it. As I'm older now, I'm finding it more of a challenge to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And it's and one of the things I did is I did exactly what you said. So I found that because I'm a bigger guy, one, I never sleep on my back because I know the breathing gets cut off. So I'm always sleeping on my side. But I know I was also snoring because I was told I was snored. And they're like, how does that not wake you up? I go, I don't hear anything. But anyway, I actually found an item, a product. It's called Intake Breathing. Go to intakebreathing.com. I'm telling you, it was a nose strip, but it's not just like the old nose strips. What it is that there are tabs on each side, and there's a magnet thing that goes across your nose, and it pulls the nostrils open. It's amazing. Like, you feel the difference, and as soon as you put it on, you feel the difference. Now, it was designed for athletes, motocross athletes of all people, and I've used it. And I'm going to tell you that when I'm lifting, I get 2 extra reps out of my sets by putting this on. But more importantly, when I sleep at night, I don't snore anymore. And so, because I was looking into CPAP machines, I was looking into everything going, how can I get myself to quit snoring? Because my thing is, when you identify a problem, don't focus on the problem, focus on finding a solution. And so I looked and looked and looked, and I came and I found this thing, and I'm so happy because it's non-invasive, it's very inexpensive, and it works. And those are the 3 things I love most. So
Yeah,
are
right.
there techniques of things that people can do to prevent themselves from snoring or having to be hooked up to a CPAP machine or things like that? Are there things they can do to help their health?
Absolutely. So, what you want to remember is that a CPAP machine, so it stands for continuous positive air pressure, it's really just pushing in more oxygen through your nose. So, you're getting more air through your nose anyway. So, you're kind of along that same lines, right? So, I don't
Okay.
want to completely compare the two because people do need their CPAPs. Don't stop using your CPAP just right away, but you want to optimize the amount of air you're getting through your nostrils, right? So when you're using either the strips, the Breathe Right strips, there's sleepy strips, you're able to use any sort of product, even a nasal dilator that you would put in there. It's got the little tubes that physically prop open the nostrils. What you're going to do really is you're optimizing how much air you can get in through those spaces. And so that's going to be really critical because remember, noses for breathing. This is how we're optimizing the oxygen, right? So it's going to be warmer and easier to take in. It's going to be filtered, more pure to take in, and it's going to be full of the stuff that we need in order for it to bind that nitric oxide. And so what you are doing is optimizing that air and keeping everything nice and open physically. But also think about how you could keep everything clear and open just naturally. So everybody forgets about the nose, right? We brush our teeth, we clean our bodies, you do all that other stuff, but nobody ever cleans out your nose. The nose is playing such a critical role. Like, we have to clean out our nose. So saline rinses, aromatherapy diffusers, you want to make sure that first you blow your nose. Proper nasal hygiene always starts with blowing your nose. Blow your nose, get it nice and clear, right? Then you're going to take a saline rinse, or even if you want to be, super sophisticated about it and get one of those neti pots, and you're going to like actually clean out the nose by running the water completely through it. So you're irrigating your nose. You're going to clean it out. You're like, no way, not doing that. You clean it out. And that's going to help. That can only help. You're going to be opening up more space in there, freeing up more space. And the more you keep up with your nasal hygiene, the more you'll be able to optimize that air. You'll be able to get more air in there naturally. So it's a combination of things. You want to clean your nose first, and you want to have something that you're using to keep it nice and open.
Okay, so that begs for two questions. One, how often do you do that? And two, does nose picking count as a cleaner? So I know lots of people who clean their nose that way. I have never done that.
No, picking your nose does not count for anything, unfortunately. I wish I had better advice than that. No, but you want to definitely do nasal hygiene daily. And I would recommend that if you only had 5 minutes to do it, it's the 5 minutes as you're prepping before bread.
Really, daily?
And yep, so every day.
All right, so I guess so. I mean, because I was thinking, is there I guess there's nothing in the nose that protects the nose. Like I know people who do the wax in the ear. They have this wax paper and they light it on fire, and it takes all the ear wax out. But you're not supposed to do that every day. There's the wax is in there to help protect the ear, from getting wind and stuff. I mean, there's a certain amount of wax that you're supposed to have in your ear so that it doesn't cause problems. But I've seen people who will do this and try to get the earwax out all the time. And I go, I don't think that's what you're supposed to do. So, but you're saying this is perfectly healthy and natural to clean your nose every day.
Absolutely. It's incredibly natural, super healthy. I mean, you will get the best sleep of your life once you start doing a daily nasal hygiene routine.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I guess I have to do it because I want to get back to where I can sleep 8 hours a day. The strip that I use, it doesn't come off. You have to, even when you want it to come off, you really have to be able to, and so it keeps the nose open and I'm breathing better and I'm not snoring. But I also, because I used to power lift and I still do, and I shouldn't, but I have shoulder impingement right now. And so in the middle of the night, I'll get a stabbing pain in my shoulder and I wake up, and that happens constantly. And so I know that that's part of the reason why I'm not getting a good night's sleep right now. But even before this, I was still not getting that REM sleep that you talked about. And that's what my initial question was going to be. I've always heard that you have to get that 8 hours of consistent sleep for it to benefit you. But I'll tell you, when I take afternoon naps, I feel great afterwards. Is there not any benefit to naps if you don't end up getting the 8 hours? Is it just not as good, or what's the real lowdown on that?
So I don't like to focus so much on the time, like the quantity of time you spent in bed that you thought you were getting sleep. I like to focus on the quality of the sleep, because just being in bed and just having your eyes closed doesn't mean that you were actually sleeping, cycling through your sleep phases and stages appropriately. You could have very well been getting a shorter duration of stage 3, where there's like cellular and muscular rejuvenation. A significant amount of people who think that they get good sleep, but they actually have restless sleep, don't get enough REM. So they're certainly not getting their brain function restored. And then we have, to weigh how much time we're in the bed versus how much quality of sleep. So I would say that, if you are really looking to know about the quality of your sleep, you want to judge it by how you are feeling when you wake up. Do you feel restored? Do you feel like, you're ready to go for the day? Because when you wake up, especially after a great night of sleep, you should feel that way. You should feel like, oh, that was a great night of sleep. I'm ready to get up and get out of the bed. But if you feel like you've been in bed for that 8-10 hours, and then you just can't get up, you just, I have to get up today. When you're dragging like that, you didn't get a good night of sleep. You were in bed for 8 to 10 hours, but it had nothing to do with sleep. Right. And so your power nap is going to make you feel good, because you might actually be getting a little bit more of those cycles that you missed out on when you were, sleeping for 8 to 10 hours that night before.
Yeah, see, that's what I think is happening. I think because when I say a nap, most people, like I'm talking at least a couple hours. And so, and yet when I wake up, that's when I feel refreshed. And so that's why I was thinking there's, it doesn't make any sense to me to tell me that what I just did doesn't have some benefit, because I feel better now than I did when I had to wake up in the morning and had a restless sleep. And so it just made sense to me that there has to be benefit to this sleep, because this is where I feel good.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You are 100% on the right track there. I could tell you're a nasal breather.
Yes, I am. I don't normally mouth breathe, and no, the only time I mouth breathe is if I'm sitting in my recliner and I don't have an old man's recliner. I have one of these cool looking recliners. Anyway, I'll lay back, and if I fall asleep, because again I'm on my back, that's when I breathe through my mouth, and that's that, and I can tell because I'll wake myself up because I'm not getting the oxygen into my body like I'm supposed to. So, um, something else I wanted to talk to you about was the nitrous.
Nitric oxide.
Yes, it's healthy for us to have a certain amount of that. Is it not? Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So don't confuse nitric oxide with nitrous oxide, which is like laughing gas. Nitrous oxide is a combination, a molecular combination that's used for laughing gas. But nitric oxide is a different type of chemical combination, and that helps to bind to the receptors in the body. Different things.
And so it's healthy to have a certain amount of that we take in. Correct? Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's dispel myth here, if you can. So all these people that we've seen recently who cry that they have asthma, or that that it's harmful to have nitric oxide in their system by wearing these masks, can we say, no, you're foolish? Stop with it now. Stop. Can we say that?
We could say that in like a very diplomatic way. Yeah, we can say that.
I thought I was being diplomatic. Damn. I was trying to put it as nicely as I could think of. um, what's interesting is what got you started in this. I mean, how did you come about this? Because I will tell you honestly, unless, like with me, I've, since the time I was a kid and just starting junior high school, the first time I picked up weights, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I was in love with it, and so I wanted to learn about anatomy and things of that nature, and the mechanics of lifting and how it affects the muscles and all that stuff. But how did you get started? Like, was this something that you've always had a passion for, health and getting into this field?
Oh, absolutely not. I started out as a registered dental hygienist, licensed as a hygienist, and I was working for a pediatric dentist. Now, as a mother, I had a lot of different things that my kids were struggling through, but nobody ever talks about that stuff. Honestly, somebody says, "How are you? How's everything? How are the kids?" And you're always like, "Oh, good, great." You're not telling them about the honest stuff, like what's really going on in your life. Like, oh, my 10-year-old has been wetting the bed and having night terrors and sleepwalking and having all sorts of issues at night and sleep pretty much routinely every single night. You don't talk about the constant thread of antibiotics that you have coming through your house because everybody's always sick with sore throat or ear infection. And you definitely don't tell them that your oldest is struggling with ADHD and, behavioral impulses, and you are just feeling so weighed down by all of that stuff. No, when somebody says, "How are you?" everything's always good. But I actually did let my employer know what was going on with my children, because a lot of the time she would have those conversations with the parents that were coming into the office. And so I'm like, well, these things are happening with my children too. And it actually all came together in like a conversation with her, that it all stemmed to how they were breathing, what was going on with the muscles in that oral facial complex. I mean, they had so many issues that have been resolved by just reconfiguring what they were doing with the muscles, how they were breathing, and changing overall a lot of different things as far as our lifestyle. So I think that pushed me like well over the edge into this.
To find solutions for what was going on with your children. That's al-
Absolutely.
that's always a motivator for mothers. They always do that. So,
I know. Darn us loving these kids.
and so you said that your one kid or your one child had ADHD. Is,
Yes.
was that true?
So, what we want to remember about ADHD is that ADHD is not really like something you can 100% test for, right? Like you could fill out and have all the signs and symptoms, and then based on the scoring test, yeah, and it's not something that one provider would necessarily test for. So, it's really like an amalgamation of things, ADHD, and it's actually been studied that there's like a 70% overlap between ADHD and a lot of the manifestations of that. So, the behavioral impulse, lack of behavioral impulse, the inability to really concentrate and focus. There's been a lot of crossover between those manifestations and the manifestations of sleep disorders in children. So, as far as children are concerned, there's a 70% overlap. So, very likely it had a lot to do with the fact that he was not getting good sleep, because once we improved his breathing, it helped improve his sleep. We were able to overcome a lot of those things that we believed was ADHD, but actually was not.
So, all right. So we talked about what to do as far as cleaning out the nostrils, opening up the passageways, and something I just want to touch on this real quick because you said I can tell you're a nose breather. One of the things that happens as you get lazy and get older is that you don't pay attention. Like even though I've been doing it my whole life, all of a sudden I caught myself mouth breathing. When I did this intake breathing, it reminded me that I'm supposed to breathe through the nose. And so even when I don't have it on, I'm almost always breathing through my nose just because it's this muscle memory connection, if you will. So
Awesome.
so when you discovered this with your child and you cleaned out his nostrils at night and stuff so that he could get more oxygen, get better sleep, are there any techniques that you were using to help his sleep? Because one of the things I wanted to touch on as well is that I had heard that sleep is the most important thing for longevity of life. More important than diet, more important than exercise. It is the number one correlation with longevity of life. The people who live the longest sleep the best. So I want to learn about this. So what else did you do with your child to be able to give them a good night's sleep?
Well, that's where a lot of the myofunctional therapy played a role as well. So, when it came time to really deal with the sleep, a lot of what we did was we had to deal with how his muscles were behaving as well. So, when it comes to snoring, let's start with snoring. When it comes to snoring, we have to think about physiologically what exactly is snoring, right? So when you lie down and all your muscles relax, because as we lie down, that's what happens, our muscles relax. And those soft muscles of the throat tend to just collapse on each other. And then when you hear the snoring, it's really the sound of air meeting resistance as it's trying to pass through this narrowed airway space, right? So, with the myofunctional therapy, what we really do is we engage with a lot of these muscles to help try to, for lack of a better word, but we're trying to tone or strengthen them. We're trying to achieve a more patent airway so that we are getting more of that oxygen to flow through, right? And then a lot of times, how you use your tongue and your facial muscles are going to impact how strong or capable of, better neuromuscular function those back of the tongue, those throat muscles are working. So, what I do is I really try to work on developing personalized plans with any of my clients, but definitely with my children. We're working on personalized plans to improve and optimize this oral facial function. That way, you are habituating into proper neuromuscular patterns that are going to help you sustain that openness. We want to eliminate the snoring. We want more air to come through. We would like to get to proper oxygenation. That way, things can restore and function as they should.
So I know there's people out there right now who are asking the question, with these exercises that you have people do, can they change facial features and make you look younger?
They can change some facial features. Yes, you do find some people who find that, like, okay, this the chin is not as, doesn't look like a double chin anymore. A lot of people, if we start getting into the nosedive, that would be that conversation around a tongue tie. You'll get rid of the Dowigger's hump. You'll improve the posture. You'll see a lot of changes. You get a little bit more fullness in the cheeks.
You talked
Definitely.
about that hump, the Dower's dump, hump that women get when they get older. What that's caused from the way they breathe?
There are some people, if we are going to correlate it with a tongue tie, because then we're talking about like the tension within the body.
All right,
But yes, the Dowigger's hump.
all right, so we haven't talked about the tongue tie, and I just heard about this. So what is tongue tie, and is it a fad? Is it real? What is it actually?
I love the question about whether or not it's a fad. I feel like I get that the most, where like people are like, I've never heard of a tongue tie prior to this. But actually, tongue tie, one, was first mentioned in the Bible. But even if you're not religious, it goes back into like the early 20th century, I want to say, early 1900s, where the midwives would keep a long nail because some of the babies that couldn't breastfeed, they would just use their long nail and just slice it open, and then the baby would be able to breastfeed a little better. So tongue tie has been around for a long time, a long time. But a tongue tie is essentially, we all have a frenum or a little piece of connective tissue that connects the base of our tongue with the floor of the mouth. Okay. I know it sounds really weird, unless, for those, I can't describe it any other way. For those that can't see me, but for those that can see me, there's always a little string underneath your tongue.
Okay, I
So
know.
that tiny string that's under your tongue, it can be very restrictive in some people. So where they won't have optimal function of their tongue, they cannot, in some instances, protrude their tongue. They'll have difficulty elevating their tongue. They won't be able to cup their tongue. Really important for babies. They have to be able to cup their tongue in order to get proper breastfeeding. You won't be able to move your tongue side to side. There's so many things that could be impacted because that tongue is a very long organ. Okay. I like to think of it as a respiratory organ. But if that tongue that could be as far down as C3 or C4, if that tongue is not lifted up and out of the airway, so you're not able to really get your tongue up and connected with the roof of your mouth to lift that posterior portion up and out of the airway, that's when you'll find a lot of problems with breathing and so forth. So with a tongue tie, you're releasing that to provide optimal range of motion.
Do people who have that muscle, have you ever seen people who can roll their tongues and then like do this whole, I've seen people do some of the most amazing things with their tongue, and I can't even, I can just stick mine out. That's about all I can do with mine. So.
Yeah, there are people who can create like a clover, who could create like a taco and roll it. There are people who can do all sorts of funky things.
Do these people
Yeah.
have strong tongues so they don't have these issues with breathing, or is that just a separate talent that has nothing to do with health?
Totally separate talent. Yeah, because there's so many ways that the tongue can be used in function. There's actually 8 different muscles that are in pairs. So it's really 16 muscles that innervate the tongue to help it create different movements and shapes and to, just to function. And so they could have somebody who is able to create a clover who's really good with maybe 4 of those muscles that would enable them to do that. But then the other half of the muscles aren't really functioning properly at all. It's
What
very dynamic.
I asked about it being a fad is because, have you ever heard of mewing?
Yes, I have heard of mewing.
And so I did some research on mewing because I was like, and to see if there's really, if people really did have change. And from what, when I say research, folks, in this particular instance, I mean, I went on YouTube. That's what I mean. So,
That's not research.
but what I did, and all was anecdotal, of course, because every one of these people, what I found is one, the amount of time that you had to spend doing it to be able to get change, and then after doing it, I didn't see any change in these people. So that's why I asked if it was a fad. Does you look like you want to tell me mewing does work?
Mewing works to a certain extent, yes, but it's really collaborative if you're looking for like real actual change. So, it's working with your muscle function, but also working with what's going on structurally with you. Because you can mew all day, all night, but it's not going to 100% make, giant impacts on what's going on if you have narrow arches. It's not going to change if you have a tongue tie, if your tongue is tied, if your lip is tied, because that's a possibility too. Lip tie is definitely a thing. It's not going to change anything if your palate or the roof of your mouth is too high. It's not going to give you, the amazing super results if structurally there's something impeding.
Okay, I have to ask you, what's lip tying?
We all have a little string that connects our lip, both the bottom and the top, to the gums on the
Yeah.
on the top and the bottom arches. So that could be restrictive as well. There are some people actually that will get that space in between their front two teeth. So between the central teeth, when you see that spacing,
Right.
clinically it's called a diastema. Sometimes that lip is actually inserted. So that little string is actually inserted between those two teeth. And so those people will have struggles forever getting those teeth to try to come together and stay together because physically there's a little piece of connective tissue keeping them apart.
Oh, so that's why David Letterman and Madonna don't do anything about it. I was always wondering why. You have all the money in the world. Why don't you go close that gap? Not that they look ugly with it or anything. I'm just curious. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they love it. Now I know why.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we have lip tie, we have tongue tie, we have our breathing and sleeping, and but the myofunctional therapy also includes things like something which I've never heard of, grounding and biohacking. What are those things?
Oh, so you've never heard of grounding or biohacking. Okay, awesome. So biohacking in the simplest terms possible is really using your body to help you heal, but you're going to hack it. So you're going to eliminate a lot of the external impacts and you're going to focus more on internal. So what you're trying to do, like with grounding, so there are natural vibrations because the earth is a wonderful thing and we are creatures of the earth, right? But other creatures of the earth do actually interact with it, right? So we don't have any animals that wear shoes, honestly, except for those poor dogs that people put shoes on. But we don't have any animals that wear shoes. And even the birds that fly at some point in time connect with the ground, right? So they're really getting a nice connection with the earth. And in the soles of our feet, in the palms of our hand, there are a lot of proprioceptors. We're supposed to be able to connect with things. When you connect with the ground, especially with the soles of your feet, you get those vibrations from the earth. You get that energetic magnetism from the earth. You're getting some of that, and that's going to help to power some of your cells, regenerative healing. It's really, really powerful stuff, biohacking, and definitely grounding. Grounding and being one with the earth is going to help phenomenally with so many things.
See, I've always thought like whenever you walk out on grass with your bare feet, it just like you feel something different. And so
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was just like, it just feels so good and not to have shoes on and to be able to be touching the earth and stuff. But I didn't know if it was all, psychological or if there was actually something to it. So you're saying there's definitely a connection. There's this magnetic force in, that we are able to receive now because we don't have shoes on.
Absolutely. And if we think about our brain and how our brain works of lots of nerves, and those nerves, how do they communicate with each other? We all know that that's energy. It's sending these electric signals, and that's how we're really functioning overall. We are electric. Our bodies are electric. So to connect with the earth and get that energetic feelings from the earth as well, it definitely resonates within the body. So you're 100% feeling something. I would say that's 100% why I'm not in New Jersey right now. I can't connect with the ground, too much snow.
Yeah, well, there must be some magnetic feeling with snow, I would think, when you're making little snow angels I I've seen people go out there and just like their underwear and just I guess to show that they can handle the cold. And I'm like, okay. It's like I like being one with nature, just maybe not that much. So,
Exactly. Like I'm a Jersey girl, but ooh, I that cold. Ooh, no.
so well, I'm sure as that today it's more of a challenge because even finding a patch of grass to walk on that hasn't been sprayed with chemicals, or being in an area where you don't have power lines running across the area and stuff, it almost seems like it's becoming less and less possible to find places where you can connect with the earth in a healthy way.
Yes, it is becoming incredibly difficult. And I appreciate that you even mentioned that. I find the places that where I have the best grounding are going to be those areas that are protected, for lack of a better word, where you're going to get your state parks, absolutely your beaches. Connecting with the sand is fantastic. Another reason why I'm not in New Jersey, because, we can't do that right now either. So Florida's fantastic for all of this. But yeah, you're going to want to be in those spaces that are protected, kind of free from a lot of human involvement. And you definitely want to try to avoid a lot of these 5G areas, the areas that have a lot of this it's disruptive energy is what I would call it. It's going to have a lot of the energy from the Wi-Fi signals that are just floating around, just waiting for people to catch them. So you want to have freedom from a lot of that electronic, a lot of that influence of humans, and that's where you can best connect with the ground.
I liked what you said about the beaches because I will tell you we have some great beaches here in Florida. You're down in Fort Lauderdale, so obviously you have a nice beach down there. I'm going to give a shout out to a place called New Smyrna Beach, which is just south of Daytona. It's a very nice beach, and you're absolutely right. I used to be a lifeguard on that beach many years ago, and there was nothing that was more relaxing than just having your feet in the sand and the water. But I will tell you this: at this time of year, and while it's not New Jersey, the only people you're going to catch in the water are from New Jersey or Detroit or from Michigan, because Floridians are going, yeah, that's still too cold right now. So
Well, I'm loving it. I'll be the crazy, northeasterner hanging out in the water.
I used to live in the condo on the beach, and I remember looking out one Christmas. I was on the very top floor, and I was looking out over the balcony, and I saw these people out in the water, and I said, "Look at those crazy people. They're not from here." I found out they were from Michigan. We have too much sense to get in that water right now. It's too cold. I know it may not be cold to you guys, but it's pretty darn cold. So.
Yeah, no, I'm loving it right now. I think it's fantastic. So yeah, I'll be the crazy person. That's fine.
Well, and the other good thing about being on the beach is you were saying, be out in the protected areas, and so I think automatically of places like Yellowstone, park or something. But I was like, I'm not going to be barefoot there in case there are bears, and I'm not going to be running across the gravel or whatever, trying to escape a bear in my bare feet. So, but you're right.
Well, you'll be surprised.
Yeah, I better get my exercise in.
You'll be surprised.
I'll be breathing through my
Yeah.
nose as fast as I can.
Yes.
That's what how we need to learn. Are there any basic things that people can do to, besides what we talked about, that they can start today? Just like one or two things where you go, you do this. Now, I know we talked about the nose clean, so I'm going to assume that'll be one of them. But for better sleep and to be able to breathe through the nose, what are just one or two things that they can do that they can start today to start breathing?
So definitely nasal hygiene, you were correct, is going to be one of them. Nasal hygiene is key. You're going to make sure that you're taking care of that nose, cleaning it, keeping it nice and free from any sort of nonsense that shouldn't be in there. And then you're going to keep it open. I mean, you want to get a nasal dilator or nasal strips that are going to physically hold open that nose. The next tip I have is absolutely be consistent. People talk about routines all the time when it's children and when it's babies, especially, they talk about routines. But we as adults need routines also. You can't establish good sleep if your circadian rhythm's all over the place. And you can't get your circadian rhythm in a rhythm if you're not consistent. You've got to pick a bedtime and you should have a routine prior to the bedtime. Now, prior to the bedtime, you're going to wind down with most likely your nasal hygiene, your oral hygiene, brushing, flossing, that type of thing. I have to throw in my dental hygiene stuff somewhere, right? Brushing, flossing, and that sort of thing. And then make sure that you kind of wind yourself down into the bed. So don't do anything that's going to, kind of stimulate the mind too much. You don't want to be on your phone. You don't want to be on the television watching TV. Just wind yourself down into bed. Relax your way down into bed. Get into bed at a consistent time. It will repay you tenfold if you just remain consistent. It's going to help you really manage that biological clock that is your circadian rhythm. And you will find that you will just establish better sleep off of that one tip alone. Even if you don't shove saline up your nose to clean it, you'll find that being consistent and having a bedtime routine where you relax and wind yourself down into bed around the same time every night, it'll help.
Okay, so I noticed that, I obviously grew up in a time before cell phones, and, you just went to bed and no one worried about, it's like if they couldn't get a hold of you overnight, because there wasn't, very seldom where there's ever an emergency, but we all have our phones next to our beds now. Their phones are always on. And like you said, I don't know how many times I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll turn and I'll look at my phone. I'm like, why am I looking at my phone? Seriously, why don't I just go back to sleep? And I will. And I am very fortunate. I am one of those people. As soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm out. I can go right. And so I can look at the phone and go right back to sleep. But I often wonder, like, why am I even looking at the phone? Is there anything going to be on Facebook or Instagram that's so important at 3:30 in the morning that I have to look at it right now? And so you're right. I think we need to form new habits, or get back to the way things were, and be consistent about that, so that we do, like you said, that one thing alone will probably help increase the quality of our sleep. And I couldn't agree more, because it certainly hasn't helped. I can tell you that. um Two things: circadian rhythm that you talk about. Do people have different circadian rhythms? Because I have been, me personally, I've been, since a child, I am one of those people who can stay up through the night. Like, I even when, again, as a child, I could stay up till 4 or 5 in the morning with no problem. As soon as the sun came up, I was ready to go to sleep. And I feel like I'm one of those night owls, and that I was meant to be up at night and sleep during the day. Do people have different circadian rhythms, or are we just messed up and we need to fix our circadian rhythm?
People do have different circadian rhythms. That is absolutely true. And I think it dates as far back as, the 1400s. We've had chronicled thought leaders who have different sleep patterns prior to there ever being anything really industrialized, right? Where they are falling into a delayed sleep phase. So, delayed sleep phase is still a thing too. That is a medical diagnosis as well, where you have difficulty getting into what would be your typical or more common circadian rhythm, where the sun's down, you should be down. There are people who do have trouble falling into that. So it's absolutely a personalized thing. No two people have to have the same circadian rhythm. No two people have to feel tired at the same time. If one's a night owl and one's an early bird, it's all good.
Okay, good. Because one of the things that I find that supposed researchers do is they leave certain variables out of their research. So you'll find that they'll say people who work at the midnight shift tend to die younger and tend to have, worse health. And I'm going, well, okay, but is it because they're working the night shift, or is it because the food that's available to them at that hour of the morning is not quality food? And I think it's more to do with how they eat and the things that they do and don't exercise because they're going to work, and when they get home they're the sun's coming up and everyone's going to school, and so it's the world doesn't operate on their hours, and so it's I think it's more of a challenge. So I never necessarily believed that it was because they worked during the night and slept during the day, that's why they died younger, that's why they were not as healthy as others. Would that be?
Absolutely, 100% correct. There has been so much research that you're right. There's not enough of the quality data, I would say, where we're really looking at all of the different factors that do influence a lot of these things. One of the biggest factors being that most of those people who do work that third shift or that late shift, those people aren't working that 7 days a week, right? So they would have maybe 5 days out of the week where they're cycled in that way, but then they're trying to keep up. They still have a life, right? They still have maybe a partner, a spouse, or they friends, family, whatever. They have stuff that they have to do during the daytime. So they're already thrown off. They don't have proper circadian rhythm anyway. They can't biologically stay consistent and still function with daily life the way it is. But definite diet is absolutely a role as well, because you imagine their lunchtime is sometime when everybody else is sleeping, but then when they are actually in the house, maybe they get a shorter duration of sleep, and then they might eat with their family during the daytime. So they're not having quality food, but even food schedules, because where other people might stop eating towards a certain hour at night, so maybe let's say they stop around dinner time and then they won't eat again until breakfast in the morning, these people are probably on some odd 24-hour anytime's great to eat type of schedule. So it's multifactorial. I agree.
Yeah, and so you make a very interesting point, because when I used to be a bouncer in a bar, again, many years ago, all my friends worked in the bar area, and so they were bartenders or DJs or whatever. And so the bar would close down, we would go get something to eat, we'd go to bed, and I'd wake up like around 1 or 2, and me and my best friend, we go to the gym. I felt great, like always had a good night's sleep, always felt rested. I was ready to go to the gym and work out, had the best workouts of my life, go to the beach afterwards, and then come home, and I'd be ready to go to work whenever it was time, like 9 or 10 o'clock. And I never felt better, never. But then everyone around me had that same schedule too. So I didn't have to get up and eat with the family, or get the kids off or pick the kids up. And so my sleep was never interrupted. And so it's probably key to have people like yourself surrounded with you so that you all are on the same clock.
Absolutely, because you got to be able to get consistent. You're never going to have a great circadian rhythm. Your sleep is going to suffer if you're kind of all over the place. One day you're sleeping nights, the next day you're sleeping days. It's not healthy.
The only thing that could throw a monkey wrench in that is if, because like I said, the rest of the world isn't on your schedule, and so I've seen some videos of, they're called Karen videos, which I'm obsessed with. But anyway, you'll get these poor women, and they're screaming because they've been working all night, and all of a sudden there's this construction crew out there making all this noise, and like I can't sleep. Like, and it's like they're not doing anything wrong. They have to work, but I can also understand her that she's cranky because she's not getting any rest. So it makes it a challenge to say the least.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Um, in James Nestor's book, he talks about certain breathing techniques. Do you have any breathing techniques that you like for people to practice or do? One that that again encourages health, but encourage it helps them to what's the word I'm looking for, to get into the habit of breathing correctly.
So, while I appreciate the dozens of breathwork routines that are out there, and there's so many things that are beneficial to the body in so many different various ways, I think the most important type of breathing is to practice some sort of conscious breathing where you are taking conscious control of your breath, where you are aware of how it is. Do you hear something when you're breathing? Breathing is meant to be inaudible. You shouldn't hear yourself breathing. There's a problem there. You should be able to count your exhalation and your inhalation. And if they don't meet up, but your inhale is more than your exhale, that's a problem. You want to make sure that you're aware of your breathing patterns. Where's your breath coming from? Are you feeling it more in your belly? Is there a rise and there a fall? That's great. That's diaphragmatic breathing. Or is it more in your chest? That's going to be a problem. So I think the best way to breathe is to just be conscious of your breathing and then take control of it, because it is a subconscious act that does occur. It's just like trying to control your heartbeat. You can't control your heartbeat, but you can take control of your breath. So nasal hygiene, if you are hearing yourself breathing, and also visual specialists like an ENT who might be able to look and see like what's going on. Why is there a sound when you're breathing? I would also take a look into myofunctional therapy or something else if you feel like you're doing too much of the chest breathing, and or if you feel like your breath is, too long on the inhale, not enough on the exhale. But yeah.
Make a great point with the with being aware of it, because I know people who, like, you can hear them breathing, and I've even said to one or two of them, I go, are you okay? And they're like, why? And I go, because you seem to be laboring as you're breathing. They're going, what? I go, you don't hear yourself breathing? And they go, nope. I go, okay. And so yeah, so you're right. So just be aware of our breathing, and making sure that we're breathing from the diaphragm rather than the chest, and focus on that, and that'll some
Absolutely.
excellent.
That's going to help significantly. And it's a simple thing. It's not like you have to, go and invest into learning a whole practice of breathing. Be aware of your breathing and what's going on with it. And then if you can take conscious control of it, and you can try to focus more on belly breathing, or you can try to focus more on improving your exhales, then do that. But if you're struggling with it, definitely get help.
It's funny because as you said it, when you first said it, I was going, am I breathing from my diaphragm? And I was like, oh, I am good. So, but I wasn't aware of it until you mentioned it. I was like, oh, that's good. All right. So if people take these initial steps and they go, I really like the results that I'm feeling, I want to take this, I want to do more. How can people reach you and talk to you and get the advice that they need to take this to the next level, because they want to have better health, better night's sleep, and all the good stuff that I consider quality things of life?
Yeah. I would say that I think the next step is to, reach out. You can always find me on my website, www.themyospot, THEMYOSPOT.com. I think that the best way to learn more, if you wanted to learn more, is to either visit my blog. My blog is airwaymatters.blog, AIRWAYMATTERS dot blog. Or I have a wonderful book on Amazon that I dive deep into all of this stuff in. It's called Accomplished: How to Sleep Better, Eliminate Burnout, and Execute Goals. So that would be the three mechanisms of, learning more or getting help.
Okay, and your book's called Accomplished.
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 Yes.
Okay, yeah. All right. So what I'll do is, for everybody who's listening and viewing us, I'm going to put the links below, to her websites, to her blog, and connection to the book on Amazon, uh, to so that you can have a link if you want to buy it. And I'm going to tell you, I love everything that you told us today. I mean, you're just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this, and I've learned a lot from you today. So thank you so much. It was great having you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to share. I'm so passionate about this stuff, and I love that you are, equally as passionate about learning more.
Well, I've been a personal trainer for most of my adult life, for over 30 years. And one of the things, the reason I got into doing podcasting is because I want to reach more people, but I want to talk about things are just as important as diet and exercise. And this, I mean, I want to talk about a whole slew of topics, but I'll always talk about things that will help us with our health and help us have a longer and healthier life, not just a longer life, but a healthier life as well. And what you teach is absolutely one of those things that are of most importance for us to have both.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add? You got a record coming out? Anything like that?
I do not have a record coming out. That should be my next thing. Make some songs about breathing.
You joke, but I'm telling you. Be up for,
Maybe in the future.
there you go. Okay, very good. Well, listen, thank you for joining me. You keep warm down there in Fort Lauderdale. I'll keep warm here in Orlando. and and you're such a wonderful person. If you ever have anything else that if you write another book or if you put that album out, let me know. Or if you just want to talk about how hot it is in Fort Lauderdale, give me a call. We'll get you on the show. Okay.
Awesome. I will do that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. All right, folks, that's going to be our show for today. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, take care, be safe, and don't forget, especially now that Karese told you, you can wear your mask. It doesn't hurt you. Wear your mask.